year ago, America fell in love with a singing janitor from Terre Haute.
Oh, Richard Goodall won, you might remember, America's Got Talent.
Almost everyone had already decided what Richard Goodall's life would look like. He was a school janitor in Indiana, working long days and living far from the bright lights of Hollywood. But in just a few minutes, one performance changed everything. Millions watched in disbelief as an ordinary man with an extraordinary voice reminded the world that dreams do not have an age limit. And the most surprising part? The clues had been there all along. Before we go any further, here's something I'd love to know. If you had a dream that never came true, would you keep chasing it after 50? Or would you let it go? Let me know in the comments. Richard Goodall's story didn't begin on a television stage. It began in the quiet halls of a school, where he spent years making sure classrooms stayed clean and students had a welcoming place to learn. To most people, he was simply the friendly janitor they saw every day. Few knew that behind his humble smile was a lifelong love of music. Growing up, Richard admired singers who could make people feel something with just a single song. Music became his escape, but life had other plans. Bills needed to be paid. Responsibilities came first. Instead of performing for huge crowds, he worked a regular job and sang whenever he had the chance. Friends, family, and coworkers knew he had an incredible voice, but like many talented people, he wondered if his moment had already passed. Everything started to change after videos of Richard singing at school began spreading online. Students and teachers were amazed by his powerful performances, especially his heartfelt version of Journey's "Don't Stop Believin'." Those clips reached thousands of people and many began asking the same question. Why isn't this man on a bigger stage? That growing support eventually encouraged him to take the biggest chance of his life. When Richard stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, he didn't look like the typical superstar. He looked like someone millions of viewers could relate to. That was exactly what made the moment so powerful. As the judges listened and the audience grew silent, nobody knew they were about to witness one of the most unforgettable auditions in the show's history. But that emotional performance was only the beginning. What happened after the music stopped would change Richard Goodall's life forever, and it would prove that the road to success is sometimes much longer than anyone expects. When Richard Goodall finally stood under the bright lights of America's Got Talent, he wasn't trying to act like a celebrity. He walked onto the stage with the same quiet kindness that students and teachers had known for years. He introduced himself simply as a school janitor from Indiana. It sounded ordinary, but within minutes, everyone would realize there was nothing ordinary about what they were about to hear. As Richard spoke with the judges, he admitted that singing had always been his passion. For years, he had performed only for small groups, school events, and friends. Deep inside, he dreamed of something bigger, but he also knew that life doesn't always give people the chance to chase every dream. Instead of giving up completely, he kept singing whenever he could. Looking back, that decision may have been the most important one he ever made. Then came the moment that changed everything. The music started, and Richard began singing Journey's "Don't Stop Believin'." Almost instantly, the room became completely silent. His voice was powerful, emotional, and honest. He wasn't trying to impress anyone with fancy moves or dramatic performances. He simply sang from the heart. Within seconds, the judges exchanged surprised looks. The audience leaned forward in their seats. It was clear that something special was happening. By the time Richard reached the chorus, people were already cheering. Many stood up before the song had even ended. When the final note echoed through the theater, the crowd exploded into a standing ovation. The judges praised not only his voice but also the emotion behind every word. It was the kind of audition that reminded people why they loved the show in the first place. But the reaction didn't stop inside the theater. Clips of the performance quickly spread across social media. Millions of people watched, shared, and commented. Viewers from around the world said they felt inspired because Richard looked like someone they might know. A neighbor, a coworker, or even a family member. His story proved that incredible talent can be hiding in the most unexpected places. According to interviews Richard gave after the audition, he never expected such an overwhelming response. He was grateful just to have the chance to perform. Yet overnight, his life had completely changed. News outlets covered his story, fans flooded social media with messages of support, and many called him one of the most inspiring contestants the show had ever seen. But with that sudden fame came something else: pressure. For the first time, millions of people expected Richard to prove that his unforgettable audition wasn't just a lucky moment. Every performance from now on would be judged against the last. Could he keep surprising America? Or would the weight of expectations become too much to carry? The answer would take him on an emotional journey that nobody, not even Richard himself, could have predicted. For many contestants, an unforgettable audition is the highest point of their journey. After that first burst of excitement, the pressure becomes almost impossible to handle. Fans expect another magical performance. The judges expect even more. One weeknight can end the dream. Richard Goodall knew that. He had spent decades living outside the spotlight, so suddenly performing in front of millions of viewers was a completely different world. Every rehearsal mattered. Every song choice mattered. He wasn't just singing anymore. He was trying to prove that his first audition was only the beginning. As the competition continued, Richard stayed true to what had brought him this far. Instead of chasing flashy performances or trying to become someone he wasn't, he focused on telling a story through every song. That honesty became his greatest strength. Week after week, audiences connected with him. His performances weren't just about hitting the right notes. They were about hope, second chances, and the idea that it's never too late to change your life. Many viewers said they saw themselves in Richard. Some had put their own dreams aside because of work or family. Others believed they had missed their opportunity. Watching Richard gave them a reason to believe again. But behind the scenes, the pressure kept growing. Each new round meant another chance to go home. One mistake could erase everything he had worked toward. Richard later shared in interviews that he tried not to think about the competition itself. Instead, he reminded himself why he loved singing in the first place. That simple mindset helped him stay calm while others struggled with the stress. Then something remarkable happened. The public didn't just admire Richard's voice. They began rooting for his entire story. Social media filled with messages from teachers, janitors, parents, and everyday workers who saw him as proof that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. His journey became bigger than a talent show. It became a symbol of perseverance. And that emotional connection made every performance even more powerful. Just when it seemed Richard had already won the hearts of America, the competition reached its most intense stage. Only a handful of contestants remained, and every one of them had the talent to win. The margin for error was almost gone. But what happened next nearly changed everything. Before we reveal the performance that pushed Richard to the edge of victory, make sure you subscribe. We uncover the stories behind the headlines, the moments most people never get to see. The finale was approaching fast. One last series of performances would decide whether the humble school janitor would return to his normal life or walk away as the newest America's Got Talent champion. Few people could have predicted what happened when the final votes were counted. The final night of America's Got Talent was filled with nervous energy. Every contestant standing on that stage had worked for months to reach this moment. Each one had a unique story, incredible talent, and thousands of supporters. But Richard Goodall carried something different. He carried the hopes of millions of people who believe dreams don't have an expiration date. When he walked onto the stage for one last performance, he looked calm on the outside. Inside, only he knew what he was feeling. He wasn't thinking about fame. He wasn't thinking about the prize money. He was thinking about every year he had spent believing that music might always remain just a dream. Then he sang. Once again, Richard didn't rely on flashy effects or complicated choreography. He let the emotion in his voice do the work. Every lyric reflected his own journey, a man who had waited decades for a chance that many people thought would never come. By the end of the performance, the audience was on its feet. The judges praised his consistency, his heart, and his ability to connect with people. It wasn't just another great performance. It was the perfect ending to a season built on hope. Then came the longest few moments of Richard's life. The host began announcing the results. Millions of viewers watched from home. Families gathered around their televisions. Students from the school where Richard worked waited anxiously to hear the outcome. Across social media, fans encouraged one another, hoping the humble janitor would complete one of the greatest underdog stories in the show's history. Finally, the winner was announced. Richard Goodall had won America's Got Talent. The audience erupted with applause. Richard stood in disbelief, overwhelmed with emotion. Years of quiet dedication, sacrifice, and patience had led to this single moment. The man who had spent years cleaning school hallways was now one of the biggest success stories in television talent show history. His victory quickly made headlines across the country. News organizations celebrated his inspiring journey, while interviews revealed the same humble man audiences had fallen in love with from the beginning. Even after becoming a national star, Richard continued to thank his supporters, his co-workers, and the students who had believed in him long before the rest of the world knew his name. Many people watching right now may be carrying a dream they quietly gave up on years ago. Richard's story is a reminder that life's timeline isn't the same for everyone. One closed door doesn't mean your story is over. Sometimes the opportunity you've been waiting for arrives much later than expected, and when it does, every setback suddenly has a purpose. But winning the competition wasn't the final surprise. As Richard began speaking more openly after his victory, fans noticed something they had suspected from the very beginning. The lessons he shared about patience, faith, and never giving up revealed the deeper truth behind his incredible journey. And those words would leave an even bigger impact than the trophy itself.